Well, okay, there we go. We are officially doing better than our last webinar. We have gone live, Rob.
Awesome.
Welcome everyone today. Thank you so much for joining us. We know it is, as I mentioned in my one LinkedIn post, the new fatigue is webinar fatigue. We definitely see that everyone is going to be bombarded by invites. I think during these next hour and a half, I personally got directly on what he presented to the group, and I will be filling in with as many questions as I receive in the chat box. So really up to the audience on how much interaction we can get from you today. Also, for those that did attend our last webinar, we're so sorry for the technical glitch. Webinar Jam also apologizes for their server issue. It doesn't matter anything to you, but they gave us a whole whopping free month of their service for the issue. So for those, Rob was actually one of our guests on that. For those that jumped around through the different links, and to Jeffrey Can for being so kind to jump through the different links, we thank everyone. Yeah, appreciate that. So we're going to dive into this, and I've got one quick note that the connection's not coming through okay. We could in the chat, if we can get just any attendees to let me know if out of 10 being great stream, 1 being choppy, what are you seeing? You can send it direct to me or just throw it into the post. Okay, I've got a couple that says it seems good now. So we might have had a little bit of a choppy start. Okay, so Rob, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. For those out there, we've just recently been introduced to Genesis QMS, and it was a fantastic introduction because it was another organization that is tackling the world of data accessibility and truly understanding that the quality of that data and the accuracy of that data is just as important as being able to access it. And they focus on upstream. So we've had, I don't know, 4 or 5 meetings now, still just virtual, but learning from each other about how well Vintri is predominantly deployed in the midstream market. Genesis is most, if not all, of their deployment in upstream. Rob will correct me if I'm wrong there, but yeah, so it's one of those. We get to learn from an upstream perspective today on what they're helping the market with, what they're tackling. And Rob, with further ado, thank you so much for joining us, and I'll let you take it away.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Glad to be here. So Genesis was started in 2008 by Jim Matheson, mainly to first solve the problem of data accessibility within the field. You know, Jim himself, he's got approximately about 20 years of QA, QC experience on the upstream side. Myself, I joined Genesis in June of 2017 as a partner. So as Jeff mentioned, we predominantly, our software is predominantly used for pressure vessel assets, such as oil and gas, pulp and paper, mining, or steel manufacturing. And what our software is great for is helping our clients predict high pressure failures, along with forecasting future pipe expenditures to help maximize their cash flow. So, just do a quick recap for people that might not be familiar with what upstream is. But essentially, upstream is the beginning phase of where our oil and gas comes from. It involves everything from preliminary exploration through to the extraction of the resource. And there are many types of companies involved in the upstream process. Exploration, drilling, fracking, flowback testing and services, and NDT inspections, along with certification inspection companies. Upstream is a highly regulated industry and is inherently dangerous with all the pressure vessels. It's under a high pressure. The industry is also very environmentally and safety conscious. So it is an industry where data has to be collected and accessible and traceable to the people who depend on it. And upstream companies, they have a very unique set of challenges. First, like the equipment is portable and mobile. The high pressure equipment and piping is under intense scrutiny by provincial and state safety authorities. And the sheer number of auxiliary equipment, such as pipe, is huge. Like each of the flowback companies may have tens of thousands of pieces of pipe per company. Everything is inspected and certified on a regular basis to remain compliant. And they also must gain provincial and state operating permits, along with their employees having to be properly certified to be on site. So it's vitally important to manage all of this data within a system that can properly capture that data and easily be accessible when needed. So what is the cost of quality data and the accessibility to that data? And I don't just mean the cost of having a system in place, but for not having a system in place. What is the cost to you for being shut down for even half a day if your paper documentation is all of a sudden disappeared, or the spreadsheets that you happen to be using haven't been refreshed from the master copy in weeks? Also, what does it cost to you for an accident that occurred that essentially with the proper data could have told you that or informed you that it was an unsafe piece of equipment to use? Obviously, there is a cost to a system for quality data, but our feeling is that it is offset by making your company more efficient. The benefits to companies to data accessibility: one, you're able to manage for gain and not for pain. Plus, you're able to start managing proactively and not reactively. It allows you to keep your site open for business and operational. It also keeps your equipment and your employees compliant, and you're better organized. And then same thing, what is the benefit to companies for a good quality data set? Once again, managing for gain and not for pain, and proactively and reactively compared to reactively. Remember, prevention is the best cost saver for these companies. It allows you to make better decisions, along with keeping your employees safe and compliant, along with your equipment compliant. The analytics you can get from a really good data set, allows you to have great visibility into the health of your equipment. What's happening with that equipment? Is it getting down to being replaced? How are you going to know that if you don't have good quality data? And then one of the big points is that a lot of the oil companies now are requiring flowback testing companies or NDT companies or frac companies to start having and show that they are able to manage their data correctly. So it will help you win more bids. One of the things you might be asking is, okay, what's needed to have quality data? And there are two pieces for me that are important. One is consistency in the data, and one is validation of the data. So consistency means, your flowback testing companies or the oil company or so on to have good procedures in place and to be followed by their employees and third-party testers. Right, having good procedures in place allows them to consistently put the data in a format that is expected. And for those third-party testers, if you've got a client out there that are asking you to follow their procedures, do it, man. They'll love you for it. They'll keep you around and keep you going. And the validation of the data. Well, you as the owner of that data are responsible and accountable. to verify that the data is in the system completely and correctly. It doesn't mean you don't trust your people putting in that data or your third party, but you do want to verify. Mistakes do happen, and you want to catch those before it's too late. That's really about it from my high-level view of upstream data quality.
Perfect. Well, Rob, thanks so much. That was a really good quick snapshot to get everyone kind of up to speed on some of the similarities and some of the variances within upstream and midstream. I think some of the stuff you really pointed out is that your equipment is truly mobile. This isn't just making sure that you're keeping track of all of the material and certifications while it is going through its initial life cycle or lifespan till its final resting place. This is, you get to a site, it runs for months or weeks, and then can be on the move again. So the status quo of document-centric operations has even more pain points when the asset that the documents are associated to is even more mobile than a traditional like midstream project, which, I mean, from our experience over the last 8 years, it's hard enough on a single project with single stockpiles and single eventual right-of-ways and or facilities to keep track of everything that way. Yours is literally a moving party. So thank you for that insight on there. We fully agree the two words of trust and verify. Verification for some reason somewhere became associated with not trusting your partners, but the fact is that we do need to trust our partners. We need to build partnerships, and we need to verify that both parties are coming together in that partnership to ensure the highest quality, safest outcomes. So
for sure,
we definitely agree with that trust and verify. So with your projects, and I think we just want to make sure the audience is aware of this. So Genesis QMS has engagements across North America, and I think what some of the audience might want to learn is, what are some of the hurdles of first adopting and making that transformation from a document-centric, whether it's clipboards and spreadsheets or straight out banker boxes and binders, wherever they're at, what's some of the first hurdles that a service company or an NDT company are going to have to look at to make that transition?
Well, the big thing is acceptance. Obviously, I guess that's that's what happens when any industry or process can change on them. Just acceptance that the data is important. Trying to do pen and paper. So, for instance, a lot of the NDT inspectors out there, they still use pen and paper, and they're calling it out to maybe an assistant with them and calling out the numbers. So that assistant has to write down those numbers. Well, that's great as long as the assistant hears it correctly, writes it down correctly, and doesn't smudge, get some oil and grime on the piece of paper that smudges what you're writing down. Excuse me. So trying to convince them that a testing device is collecting that data for them is going to be easier in the long run than pen and paper has been a little bit of a challenge. The younger guys, I don't want to necessarily say that because I'm not that young myself either. But they're a lot more comfortable with using electronic readers and phones and being able to move data back and forth between the two. But we just got to try to get them out of pen and paper is the biggest thing. But then also it's the realization, okay, somebody takes that pieces of paper right now and they have to type it into their system if they, or spreadsheet or wherever, and making sure that is done correctly. So if they're not able to read the smudged writing, then it's going to be hard for them, and then they're spending time to verify with those testers, hey, was this what actually it was, and so on. I think the other big issue is serial numbers on pieces of pipe. Trying to read those can be very hard, especially after, pipe is painted over multiple times, and also just the wear on that pipe. And you're going to be trying to read a serial number from that pipe to get that in there can be quite hard. So adopting, barcode readers or RFID tags to help with being able to get exactly what that equipment is a pretty big adopter, I guess, too. And we know, like as I mentioned, we know especially right now that in the low price environment, it's very hard for them to feel like they want to spend the money on something like an RFID for an RFID tag. So maybe look at the bands. The bands you can get 10,000 bands for for a fairly reasonable price. Is that going to help you to read those serial numbers and so on?
You bring up some really good points there. So, I mean, we have a current slide up for right now showing like data capture, data integrity, data presentation, integration, kind of from Vintri's perspective, the 4 key areas to switching from document to data. And you gave so many great examples on the capture side, working backwards. So from the secondary identifier, whether it's QR codes, barcodes, RFIDs, I think a key point there is you guys have now been partners with enough individuals as they test some of those out. We are partners with different groups. All we ask is that the groups out there that are curious, just reach out to individuals like Genesis and Vintri and learn how far it's come, because secondary identifiers 5 years ago, a year ago, yes, the cost keeps coming down, and the efficiency and the usability of those solutions keeps getting better and better. The point where you had these workers, I mean, these are some of the hardest working individuals out there. Mm-hmm. And for them in some extreme climates to have to have, I think you mentioned 4 different areas where error can sneak in. We know no one's trying to make errors in any of this data capture. That's not their goal. They're all trying to do the best job possible. But as they're writing down on a clipboard, and if we're talking to our Canadian guests and they literally can't feel their fingers as they're holding that pencil or pen, or to our American guests watching this, they can't hold the pen or pencil because the sweat is so thick that it's just slipping out of their hand. This is one of those scenarios where no one's intending to add errors or mistakes to it. It's just one of those. We want you to reach out to third parties like our organizations to just learn some of the best practices and some of the takeaways and learnings we've had over the last many years. I mean, like you mentioned, your partner Jim has been doing this for so long. We've taken a lot in, and we know how to avoid a lot of the issues that can occur as you transition from status quo into a digital format. Your system is hardware agnostic, correct?
Pardon me?
Sorry, your software is hardware agnostic, right? So it's not like an organization has to go out and buy a ton of one specific iPad or
right.
a different tablet or anything like that. So it works on different systems. It's available to stay flexible so that you don't have to go down a huge hardware acquisition kind of process. And it's all about. I mean, I've seen the Genesis system. It's all about making it as clean and clear as possible so the individuals in the field who have given their feedback to a company like Genesis on the forums, giving the feedback of like, well, it would be much easier if this was here, and if we could document this here and document this there. They've truly worked with the industry hand in hand to learn what the industry needs to make the transition as simple as possible.
Right. And like you said, the upstream, we kind of look at the upstream as essentially the front line of the oil and gas industry, right? They're the people that are in the trenches. They're the ones that are there to, that really keep, in our opinion, that really keep the oil and gas industry going. Like you said, they're very dedicated. They spend the time when they need to, and like you said, especially up north, if it's a cold winter day, blowing snow and blizzarding out, they're still out there doing their work, right? Keep making sure that everything's flowing for everybody, and so trying to make it as easy for them as possible is hopefully our goal, right? If we can, like you said, if we can get them to understand, hey, in a colder climate, it's going to be easier for you to maybe start using, your iPhone even just to read the barcodes, than trying to write it down with big heavy mitts on and everything's blowing away and so on. Yeah, your pen's freezing up and whatever else. So yeah, for sure. Like, the upstream companies are, they need big call out, I think.
Yeah. No, this is here to help them as much as possible and to make the transition as clean as possible. There's groups like us that have been listening to the market for a very long time, and we're so grateful for many of our partners. I've actually seen some of our third-party groups on here sending their private message. So from that data capture standpoint, you can, by digitizing as much of it as possible, you can eliminate a lot of potential for human error. Even more importantly, you can also get it in a format that is comparable, right? And so whether it's data integrity or it's the data presentation, a large value that you talked about in your presentation was essentially being able to have the comparables, right? The before and afters. Mm-hmm. That's a huge value. So of course they need to be compliant. They need access to this information so they can present it at any time. You guys have a great certification wallet. You have your documentation all available there. The data comparison, do you maybe want to just kind of allude to the value there without going into too many specifics?
Yeah, so that comes back to the consistency of the data for us. A good historical data set is what's going to give you what you need to get predictability about what's happening with that pipe. For instance, a piece of pipe, right? If you have gaps in that consistency, then you're not going to get as reliable data. You'll at least have a kind of a thumb view of it, but it's not going to be as accurate as being consistent with that. And that's where we believe that for like the flowback companies out there that use multiple NDT companies to shoot their pipe, right, to UT their pipe, coming for them to have good procedures that can be given to each of their UT companies, third-party companies, to be able to follow those procedures and say, this type of pipe, you want to shoot it in 3 different spots, right? And we want all our UT companies to do it that way so that we have a consistent and reliable data set and historical over time. The other piece with that would be the timing of your between your testing, your inspections. Some companies, especially in the really high mobile pieces of pipe and equipment, they might test it after every job, right? And that job can last a month, maybe days, who knows? But so they're going to basically test right as soon as that job's done. They can see, okay, at the end of this job or at the beginning of this job, we had this amount of life left in the pipe. At the end of this job, now have this this thickness left, so we expect this remaining life to be 2 years. So they can now start scheduling their UT testing at regular intervals and be able to know, hey, this pipe's getting, these particular pieces of pipe are getting lower. And so let's schedule a little bit more often just to make sure everything's going to be safe and compliant. And even with some of our sand management clients, right? Their pipe's not as mobile. It's static. It's pretty much static with the units that they're on. So they're able to set, hey, we're going to set up a 6-month time schedule. Every 6 months, we're going to go out there, test it. And once it starts getting below, a year remaining life, then we're gonna now test it every 4 months, just to make sure that it's not going to blow on us or wash out on us and cause damage or whatever. Yeah.
That's a great example of turning data into insight. Well, turning data into information, which then turns into insight. So thank you for sharing that.
Sorry, I was just going to mention one other piece about that is that it comes back to winning jobs for some of these companies, right? A lot of the oil companies now are coming out and saying, hey, we want an all-in price for you to come in and do this job for us. Well, a lot of these companies are like, geez, how do we do that without knowing how the health of our pipe? Because if it's a 6-month job and they take pipe that is in there, maybe only has 4 months left of life, well, then that's a reactive issue and not a proactive issue, right? So they can start when they're bidding for a job, they can say, you know what, we've got pipe here that is going to last us for 2 years. It's in great condition. We know that this is going to be it. So we don't need to replace anything. We could do this job for this amount of money, as opposed to coming in there and pipe washing out on you halfway through the job, and you're now spending money on replacing pipe that you weren't expecting to replace it in the first place.
Right. Another good example. And we're coming up to our 30-minute mark, and we appreciate those that have attended, and we appreciate those that are going to be taking this in afterwards. So we're going to wrap up here in the next minute and a half. With that, I mean, just a recap, you've given some great examples of, from a solution standpoint, on transitioning, and we always look at a solution as people, process, and technology. So you've talked about, you have the people, your team has worked with the industry to truly learn and have real use cases around how you can transition that capture. You've got great examples that you just shared with us where it's not just about transitioning from document to data. It's about how are you going to differentiate yourself on bids to customers because of their requirements changing. You gave great examples on, this is a lean market. We all know that. I mean, every time we think a headwind is loosening, a new headwind somehow appears. So you gave a great example there of, in these headwinds, how can you use the data to be as efficient as possible, which I think is really important for everyone to realize that this is a pretty reasonable small investment to make within the organization from a service provider standpoint, so that they can improve their capture, eliminate errors, improve the integrity of the data, turn that data into comparable insight that you explained, and then get proactive with their inventory, with their materials, so that they stay ahead of some significant pains, right? I think what we would finish on is, this industry is so lean. You and I have had quite a few conversations on this. There's not many cases where you get a second chance anymore.
Right.
And I think a lot of people need to just take a second and reflect of, like, before running something until it failed might have been a status quo that happened with, of course, we're not talking running something until it creates a spill, but running something until its absolute end, or your situation there where loading out and then not realizing that you had enough for the whole project. Like, those little things can really impact a service provider and maybe put them in a position where the few customers they still do have are all of a sudden having to look outside of them because they haven't met certain standards. Maybe just talk on that for 1 minute. Sorry to be a time limit.
So meeting certain standards?
Just the case of the pro, like you mentioned a couple times. Go for the gain, not the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And you have customers, or at least you've mentioned in our conversations before, where this is an initiative when they adopt Genesis QMS. This is to make sure they don't go in the penalty box.
Right. Yeah. Well, it comes back to also that data accessibility side of it. In one of the pictures that I had in there of a frac site, that's a lot of equipment in there, and the owner of that site or safety authorities might come in and start asking, hey, is everything here certifiable or certified to be here? And if you can't produce that documentation, once again, what's the cost to you if you get shut down for a day or two until you can get that documentation there? So the accessibility side of it is very important for sure, especially on site. Yeah, you don't want to be relying on paper, gets dropped in the mud or whatever, right? It gets driven off by somebody going off site now or something. So.
Well, and I think the biggest thing there is when it is time to transition from document-centric to data-centric, you want to reach out to reliable partners that have been in the industry, helping the industry, not just pick up a software that has not been created for the industry, with the industry. That's where we would, some people tuning in and looking at this might think, well, don't these companies kind of compete with each other? No, we're both organizations that are trying to partner with the industry, learn from the industry, and build them solutions that work for the industry.
Right.
Therefore, that's why we want to partner and promote each other, because Genesis has been doing what Vintri's been doing for so many years. We're listening to the market, we're listening to the industry, and building software tools and solutions and procedures that actually meet what the industry needs, not just a simple app that can be downloaded and pay a couple bucks for, and let's make this form work, right? Let's get a solution built for the industry by the industry. And with that, we do need to wrap up here, Rob, but thank you so much for joining us. We've got your information available here. I assume everyone can also reach out to you via LinkedIn, and pretty straightforward that they can reach out and just set up an initial meeting with you to discover more, right?
For sure. Yeah. Both Jim and I are available.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great to get a different perspective from another side of one of the most important industries in the world, one that faces a lot of headwinds, and that both organizations just want to help digitize. So thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you so much for your time. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any Vintri member on LinkedIn. We're here to help, or call our direct information on our website. But thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Stay safe out there.
Bye-bye.